And we'll keep drifting, floating together through the mysteries. 100. When did we stop being naked? Mysteries, looping softly, endlessly, through the night. Tonight we'll drift through the first cold night that forced humans to cover their skin, the moment clothing rewired shame and self-awareness in the human brain, and the forgotten age when children stayed naked long after adults dressed. There's nothing you need to do now. Just let your body sink. Heavier, heavier. Feel the mattress holding you, every muscle softening, your heartbeat slowing, thump, thump, matching the rhythm of space itself, shoulders melting down, jaw releasing, each breath pulling you deeper, deeper, into the calm, the quiet, the dark. If this helps you rest, tap subscribe, comment, and hit like, so others can find this calm too, but only if your eyes are still open. Otherwise, just drift. Now, let's drift into when did we stop being naked and why we started wearing clothes long before fabric, before the first thread was spun, before needles carved from bone. There was only skin, warm, exposed, unashamed. Our ancestors walked beneath an African sun, completely bare, for millions of years. The body needed nothing else, just skin, just breath, just the rhythm of feet on ancient earth. Why would they wear clothes? There was no reason, no need. The question wasn't when they stopped being naked, but why they would ever start covering themselves. Picture them now, early hominins moving through grasslands, their bodies covered in dark hair, thick fur protecting them from the midday heat, from the cold nights. This was our first covering, not cloth, but our own hair, dense, insulating, like the coats worn by every other mammal. We were never truly naked, not in the beginning. We carried our warmth with us, woven into every follicle. Nature provided the covering. Why add more? But something changed, slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years. The hair began to thin, to disappear, leaving behind only patches on our heads, under our arms, in scattered places. The rest of our body became bare, exposed, vulnerable in ways our ancestors never were. This transformation happened somewhere between 2 and 3 million years ago, as our ancient relatives moved from forests into open savannas, where the sun beat down relentlessly. Scientists believe we lost our fur to stay cool, to run for hours under the African sun, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Our hairless skin allowed sweat to evaporate, cooling us more efficiently than any fur-covered animal. We became the marathon runners of the animal kingdom. Naked, glistening, unstoppable. Our bare skin was an advantage, a technology written into our very flesh. But in losing our natural covering, we created a new problem. Why would we need to wear clothes? Because we'd already stopped wearing our first clothes, our fur. But naked skin created new vulnerabilities. The same exposure that cooled us also burned us. The ultraviolet radiation from the sun, penetrating deep, damaging cells, causing cancers that could kill before we reproduced. so our skin darkened, melanin spreading through the epidermis like a shield, turning deep brown, nearly black, protecting the DNA inside each cell. For hundreds of thousands of years, all humans were dark-skinned, and all humans were naked. The skin itself became clothing, pigment instead of fabric. Just breathe into that image. Early humans, dark-skinned and bare, walking upright through tall grasses, their skin their only boundary between self and world. No shame, no modesty, no concept that the body should be hidden. They knew themselves as animals knew themselves, complete, unquestioned. The nakedness was simply being. There was no reason to wear clothes, not yet. Thump, thump. Your heart slowing now, sinking deeper into the mattress. Let the weight of your body pull you down, down, into the earth, into the ancient past, where nakedness was all anyone knew, where the question of wearing clothes hadn't been asked. These early humans lived in tropical climates, where temperatures rarely dropped low enough to threaten survival. The warm air caressed their skin, day and night. They might have felt cool in the evenings, but not dangerously cold, not cold enough to die. Their bodies adapted, their metabolism adjusting, burning calories to generate heat when needed. For perhaps 2 million years, humans lived this way, naked, comfortable, complete. Why start wearing clothes when the body worked perfectly as it was? Children were born into this nakedness. They nursed at their mother's chest, skin to skin, and grew up running through the landscape without a single covering. There was no age at which clothing was introduced, because clothing didn't exist. A child's first experience of life was the sun on bare skin, the wind touching every part of them, the direct contact with the world, unmediated. The question, why wear clothes, never arose, because there was nothing to wear. But the world was changing. Ice ages came, sweeping down from the poles, bringing cold that no amount of metabolic adjustment could overcome. The first ice age that affected human ancestors arrived around 2.5 million years ago. Temperatures dropped, even in Africa. The nights became dangerous. Hypothermia, a real threat. Naked skin, suddenly a vulnerability. And here, finally, was a reason to wear something, anything, to survive. This is when fire became essential. Not fire for cooking, that came later, but fire for warmth. Humans learned to maintain flames through the night, huddling close, letting the heat radiate onto their bare skin. Fire was our first external warmth, our first answer to the question, why wear clothes? The answer was, you don't need to. If you have fire, still naked, but with fire, we could push into cooler climate, into caves, into higher elevations. Imagine those nights, bodies pressed close to flames, shadows dancing on cave walls, naked skin glowing orange, everyone together, no privacy, no separation. The fire kept them alive, but they remained exposed, vulnerable the moment they stepped away from the flames. Fire was the first clothing, invisible, warm, but impossible to carry. Your eyelids growing heavy now, heavier. Let them close if they want to, or keep them soft, unfocused, gazing into the darkness. You're safe here, warm. No need to huddle by any fire, just your breath, in, out, slow, slower. Fire extended human range, but it had limits. You can't carry fire everywhere. You can't run with fire, hunt with fire. Fire keeps you stationary, tethered to one spot, for true expansion, for migration into genuinely cold climates. Humans needed a different answer to why wear clothes. They needed warmth they could take with them, wrapped around their bodies, portable, personal. The first coverings were probably animal hides, skins taken from prey, initially for other purposes, to carry things, to create shelters. Someone, somewhere, realized the skin of a dead animal still held warmth. That draping it over naked shoulders kept the cold at bay. This wasn't clothing. Not yet. It was simply using what was available. The answer to why wear clothes was becoming clear. Survival, protection, warmth. Evidence suggests this happened around 300,000 years ago, maybe earlier. Stone tools from this period show wear patterns consistent with scraping animal hides. The tools were used to remove fat and tissue, to make the skins more pliable, easier to drape over the body. But these weren't tailored garments, just hides, thrown over shoulders, wrapped around hips, held in place by hand or crude ties. They wore clothes because they had to, not because they wanted to. The hides were likely seasonal, used when cold, discarded when warm. Nakedness remained the default state, the natural condition. Covering the body was a temporary adaptation, like seeking shade or moving into a cave. You covered yourself when necessary, but removed the covering as soon as possible. The body wanted to breathe, to feel air, to remain unencumbered. The question shifted from why wear clothes to why keep them on when you don't have to. Picture a group of early humans, perhaps Homo heidelbergensis, moving through a European valley during a cold snap 500,000 years ago. They drape animal skins over their shoulders, tie them loosely at the waist. Their legs remain bare, their feet completely exposed. The cold bites at their extremities, but they endure. This is survival, not fashion, not culture, just the body's need for warmth. They started wearing clothes because the alternative was death. Children during this period likely went naked longer than adults. Their smaller bodies couldn't retain heat as effectively, but they also stayed closer to fires, to their mothers. They were carried, kept warm by adult body heat. By the time they walked independently, ran, explored on their own, the weather had usually warmed enough that they needed no covering. Their childhood was still largely naked, still free of the weight of hides and the restriction they imposed. Why put clothes on a child who stays by the fire? Let your shoulders sink now, melting into the pillow. Feel the softness supporting you, nothing wrapped tight around you, just comfortable weight, gentle pressure. You're drifting, floating on a warm current back through time, watching humans discover, slowly, that covering the body could mean survival, that wearing clothes answered a question their naked bodies couldn't solve alone. The relationship between humans and clothing was utilitarian, practical, for hundreds of thousands of years. There was no shame associated with nakedness, no modesty, no sense that the body should be hidden for moral reasons. The body was simply the body. Everyone saw everyone else, from birth until death. There were no secrets, no private parts, just parts. They wore clothes to survive cold, not to hide themselves. Anthropological studies of isolated hunter-gatherer tribes reveal this ancient attitude toward nakedness. Groups that maintained lifestyles similar to our distant ancestors often practiced casual nudity. Children ran naked, adults worked naked in warm weather. Covering the body happened only when temperature demanded it. The human form was unremarkable, ordinary, neutral. The answer to why wear clothes was simply, when it's cold. No other reason existed. This tells us something profound. Shame around nakedness is not hardwired into human nature. It's learned, cultural, invented. For the vast majority of human history, spanning millions of years, nakedness was normal. People started wearing clothes for warmth, not modesty. Shame came later, much later, attached to clothing like a shadow. Growing as the coverings became more permanent, the question evolved from why wear clothes to why not wear clothes. And that shift changed everything. Thump, thump, your heart rhythm steady, slow, calm, each beat drawing you deeper, down into sleep, down into the ancient memory of being unashamed, uncovered, unaware that anything was wrong with the bare skin, back when clothes were tools, not identity. Stone tools advanced. Humans learned to scrape hides more efficiently, to create larger pieces that covered more of the body. But still, for hundreds of thousands of years, no one invented sewing. The hides were draped, wrapped, tied, but never stitched. This meant constant adjustment. The covering slipped, came loose, required attention. They were inconvenient, annoying, something people tolerated rather than embraced. Why wear clothes if they're this uncomfortable? The inconvenience meant people remained naked whenever possible. A wrapped hide was hot when the sun came out. It restricted movement when running or climbing. It got wet and heavy when crossing rivers. Far easier to carry it or leave it behind and retrieve it only when the temperature dropped. The answer to why wear clothes remained strictly practical. Thermal regulation. Nothing more. There's evidence from archaeological sites in Europe, places where humans lived 40,000 years ago, that show distinct seasonal patterns. Wear on stone tools suggests intensive hide processing in autumn, preparing for winter, then silence during summer months. No hide processing, no need for coverings. The cycle repeated annually. Dress in winter, undress in summer. Nakedness remained the preferred state, the natural baseline to which humans returned. They started wearing clothes each autumn and stopped each spring. Even in cold climates, people maximized their nakedness. They covered their torsos, their cores, where body heat was most critical, but their limbs often remained bare. Feet, especially, stayed uncovered far longer than we might imagine. Footwear is difficult to make without sewing. Wrapped hides don't stay on feet effectively during walking, so people endured cold feet, numb toes, rather than solve the technical challenge of creating shoes. Why wear something on your feet if you can tough it out? The invention of shoes is one of the stranger stories in human technological development. We had hand axes for nearly 2 million years, controlled fire for hundreds of thousands of years, but didn't invent proper footwear until perhaps 40,000 years ago. Our feet, those platforms carrying us everywhere, remained naked while other parts of the body gained protection. This suggests nakedness had a gravitational pull, a resistance to covering, even when covering made practical sense. The question, why wear clothes, applied differently to different body parts. Hands and feet wanted to stay free. Let your legs feel heavy now, sinking, your feet relaxing, toes going soft. Imagine them bare, unencumbered by shoes, by socks, just skin, touching cool earth, nobody watching, nobody judging, just your body, being. No reason to cover, no reason to hide. Parasites were another pressure toward clothing. Humans who remained permanently naked faced constant assault from insects, from ticks, from biting flies. Clothing created a barrier, incomplete, imperfect, but better than nothing. In tropical regions especially, where mosquitoes carried diseases, where botflies laid eggs under the skin, some form of covering became advantageous even in warm weather, a new answer to why wear clothes, protection from bugs. But clothing also created new problems. Lice evolved to live in human garments, body lice, different from head lice, emerged around 70,000 years ago according to genetic studies. These parasites could only exist in clothing, in the folds and fibers where they hid from sight. This means clothing had become common enough, permanent enough, to support a new species of parasite. Humans started wearing clothes regularly enough that evolution responded, created new organisms adapted to clothed humans. Still, this transition was slow, inconsistent. Different groups adapted at different rates. Those remaining in warm climates maintained their nakedness. Those migrating north, into Asia, into Europe, increased their covering. The human species began to diverge, not just in skin color, but in their relationship with clothing, with nakedness, with the body itself. Some groups had strong reasons to wear clothes, others had none. You're breathing slower now, softer, each exhale releasing tension, releasing thoughts, just drifting, floating in the space between waking and sleeping, the story continuing, wrapping around you like soft darkness, exploring why humans started covering themselves, and when they stopped being bare. The real transformation began with sewing, with the invention of the needle. Everything changed when humans learned to stitch hides together to create garments that fit the body, that stayed in place without constant adjustment. The oldest known sewing needles are around 40,000 years old, made from bone, with eyes carefully drilled to thread sinew through. This technology answered why wear clothes in a new way, because now you could. This technology was revolutionary, more significant than we often recognize. Sewn clothing allowed humans to migrate into the Arctic, into Siberia, into the brutal cold where naked skin would die in minutes. Groups that mastered sewing could survive winters that killed anyone without proper garments. They created fitted tunics, trousers, boots, gloves, layers upon layers, until the body beneath became almost theoretical, hidden, insulated, transformed. They wore clothes because clothes made the impossible possible, made uninhabitable land survivable. The people who migrated into these extreme climates were covered almost constantly. Their children were dressed from infancy, never experiencing the freedom of bare skin except perhaps in heated dwellings. The casual nudity of warmer climates became impossible, dangerous. The body had to stay covered, protected, concealed. This created new psychological associations. The covered body became normal. The naked body became vulnerable, strange, wrong. They started wearing clothes out of necessity, but eventually forgot why. The covering became identity. But even as some groups fully clothed themselves, others remained largely naked. In Australia, in Southern Africa, in tropical regions of Asia and South America, people continued ancient patterns, covering only when necessary, removing coverings when possible. Their children still grew up naked, still experienced the world through unrestricted skin. The human species existed in multiple states simultaneously, some dressed, some bare, some oscillating between the two. Different answers to why wear clothes depending on where you lived. This diversity persisted for thousands of years, well into the historical period. When European explorers encountered indigenous peoples in warm climates, they were shocked by the casual nakedness, by the absence of shame, by the comfort people displayed in their bare bodies. The explorers couldn't understand that these people simply had no reason to wear clothes, that they were witnessing humanity's original state, the condition that prevailed for millions of years. They saw nakedness as primitive, as shameful, as something to correct. They insisted everyone start wearing clothes, regardless of need. But the indigenous peoples saw the explorers' heavy clothing as strange, as uncomfortable, as unnecessary. Why cover the body when the air is warm? Why hide skin that functions perfectly well exposed? Why start wearing clothes when nakedness works fine? The questions went both ways. Two human groups, separated by millennia of different adaptations, staring at each other across an unbridgeable gap in cultural understanding, your mind drifting now, thoughts becoming liquid, images of bare skin, of wrapped hides, of sewn garments, all flowing together, merging, dissolving. None of it matters for sleep. Just let it wash over you, through you, the information becoming a lullaby, gentle, meaningless, beautiful. The story of why we started covering ourselves, when we stopped being naked, all blending into soft darkness. Clothing began to carry social meaning. This happened gradually, emerging over thousands of years. Initially, everyone in a group had similar coverings, similar access to hides, to basic protection. They wore clothes for the same reasons: cold, insects, protection. But as societies grew more complex, as trade developed, as craft specialization emerged, clothing became a way to signal status, wealth, identity. A new answer to why wear clothes: to show who you are. Someone realized that decorating hides made them more impressive. Shells were sewn onto leather, feathers were attached, colored pigments were applied. The covering was no longer just functional, it was communicative. It said something about the wearer, about their role, their importance, their connections. People started wearing clothes not just for warmth, but for meaning. But before elaborate clothing, before sewn garments with decorations, humans had already been decorating their bodies. Body paint, ochre rubbed into skin, creating patterns, symbols, transformations. This was perhaps the first form of clothing, not cloth, but colour, not covering, but marking. The skin remained visible, naked, but altered, made sacred, made other. Why wear clothes when you can paint your skin? Evidence of ochre use goes back at least 200,000 years, perhaps much further. Humans were painting their naked bodies long before they habitually covered them. The paint served multiple functions. It protected against sun and insects. It created group identity. It prepared individuals for rituals, for hunts, for transitions between states of being. This was wearing something without covering anything. In some ways, body paint was proto-clothing. It changed how the body appeared, how it was perceived, without hiding it. This suggests that the impulse to modify the body's appearance predates the impulse to cover it. That decoration came before concealment, that humans wanted to transform their nakedness, not eliminate it. They started wearing paint before they started wearing hides. The question wasn't why wear clothes, but why not enhance what's already there? Jewelry, too, emerged before permanent clothing. Beads made from shells, from carved bone, from stones. These were worn on naked bodies, around necks, on wrists, through pierced ears. The body was adorned, enhanced, but not hidden. This pattern appears globally, across cultures that developed independently. Humans consistently chose to decorate nakedness before they chose to cover it. They found reasons to wear ornaments long before they found reasons to wear garments. This tells us something important about the psychology of clothing. It wasn't initially about modesty, about hiding the body from view. It was about transformation, about making the body more beautiful, more powerful, more meaningful. People started wearing things to enhance themselves, not conceal themselves. Shame came later, attached itself to existing practices, rewrote the narrative, made us forget that clothing began as enhancement, not concealment. The answer to why wear clothes was originally to look better, not to hide. Let your jaw relax, unclench if it's tight. Let your tongue rest heavy in your mouth, all the small muscles in your face releasing, softening. You're sinking deeper. The story carrying you down into the soft darkness where nothing needs to be remembered, where facts dissolve into feeling, where the reasons for wearing clothes, for stopping being naked, all fade into the gentle void of sleep. Agriculture changed everything. When humans began farming, around 12,000 years ago, settlements became permanent. People stayed in one place, built structures, accumulated possessions. Social hierarchies deepened. Populations grew dense. Living in close quarters with many people created new social pressures, new needs for boundaries, for privacy, for differentiation. New reasons to wear clothes emerged, social reasons, not just practical ones. In agricultural societies, clothing became more standardized, more permanent. People couldn't simply discard garments when warm. They were part of daily life, part of social identity. Removing clothing became a marked act, unusual, requiring justification. The default state was now covered. Nakedness became the exception, the departure from normal. They started wearing clothes out of habit, out of expectation, out of social pressure. The original reasons, cold, protection, forgotten. Children in agricultural societies began wearing clothing earlier, sometimes from infancy. Their nakedness had a time limit, an expiration date. By a certain age, they were expected to cover themselves, to adopt the modesty of adults. The naked childhood that had persisted for millions of years was compressed, shortened, eventually eliminated. Why did they start wearing clothes so young? Because everyone else did. Because society demanded it. Because nakedness became unacceptable. This shift happened at different rates in different places. In some warm agricultural regions, children still went naked while adults dressed. In colder regions, everyone covered. But the trend was clear, consistent. Settled life meant clothed life. The two became inseparable. The question, why wear clothes, was no longer asked. The answer was assumed, obvious. You wear clothes because you're human, because you're civilized, because everyone does. Thump, thump. Your heart beats so slow now, so quiet, barely there. just a gentle rhythm reminding you you're alive, pulling you deeper into sleep, into the story, into the long transformation of the human body from naked to covered, from needing no reason to wear clothes to needing reasons not to. Textiles changed the equation entirely. When humans learned to spin plant fibers into thread, to weave thread into cloth, clothing became lighter, more comfortable, more versatile than animal hides. The first textiles appeared around 9,000 years ago. Linen made from flax plants, cotton in the Indus Valley, hemp in China. Each civilization discovering independently that plants could become fabric, that fabric could become clothing. Why wear animal skins when you can wear woven plants? Cloth was softer against skin than leather. It breathed better, dried faster, could be dyed vibrant colors. Weaving became a specialized skill, often practiced by women who produced fabric for their families, for trade, for tribute to rulers. The textile industry was one of the first complex technologies, requiring multiple steps, careful attention, generations of accumulated knowledge. People started wearing cloth because it was better than anything that came before. With textiles came layering. The body could now be covered in multiple levels, a base layer against the skin, an outer layer for protection or decoration. Eventually, underlayers became intimate, private, hidden even from view. The invention of undergarments created a new category, clothing that no one else should see, that existed in a realm between naked and dressed. This was perhaps the moment when nakedness became truly private, truly shameful, something that happened only in carefully controlled circumstances. Why wear innerwear? To create one more barrier between naked and clothed. The layers kept multiplying. More clothing meant more social complexity. Removing all of it, becoming truly naked, became an involved process, time-consuming, deliberate. Casual nakedness became nearly impossible in societies with elaborate dress. The body underneath became theoretical, imagined, rarely seen even by those who inhabited it. People started wearing clothes in layers until nakedness was buried so deep it ceased to exist in daily life. Mirrors were rare, reflective surfaces limited. Most people went their entire lives without ever seeing their own body fully, completely. They knew themselves by touch, by glimpses, by imagination. The concealed body was the only body. Nakedness became an abstract concept, something that happened in darkness, in privacy, in shame. They stopped being naked so thoroughly they forgot what nakedness looked like. Your thoughts scattering now, fragments floating away, nothing to hold on to, just the voice, the story, the gentle pull down, down, deeper into rest, the words washing over you, through you, becoming part of the darkness, part of sleep, the reasons for wearing clothes, for stopping being naked, all dissolving, becoming irrelevant, becoming soft, formless knowing. Clothing and gender became intertwined. Different garments for men and women, rigid rules about what each could wear. The body underneath was differentiated by what covered it, more than by its actual form. A person's sex was communicated primarily through dress, through the social performance of clothing. This created new anxieties, new pressures to conform, to signal correctly, to maintain the boundaries between masculine and feminine through the proper arrangement of fabric. Why wear gendered clothes? To make identity visible, readable, unambiguous. In some cultures, clothing marked life stages. Children wore different garments than adults, married people different from unmarried, the elderly different from the young. Your clothing told your story, announced your status. Your naked body, no longer sufficient to identify you, was supplemented, eventually replaced by the body you constructed through dress. People started wearing different clothes to mark who they were becoming, who they'd been. This meant that nakedness became not just exposure of skin, but exposure of social identity. When someone was forcibly stripped, they were stripped of their place in society, of their dignity, of their personhood. Nakedness became weapon, punishment, humiliation. Far from the neutral state it had been for millions of years, it now carried devastating meaning. They stopped being naked not just for warmth, but for dignity, for humanity itself. Slaves were often kept partially or fully naked. This marked them as lesser, as property, as bodies without rights. The ability to stay clothed became a privilege, something that free people possessed and enslaved people were denied. Clothing became inseparable from power, from autonomy, from being fully human in society's eyes. The naked body was the vulnerable body, the controllable body, the body without defenses. Why wear clothes? Because without them, you're not fully human in society's eyes. Let everything go loose now. Every muscle, every thought. Your body just weight, just warmth, sinking into the bed, into sleep. Nothing to defend, nothing to prove. Just breath, just heartbeat, just the endless drift toward rest. The questions fading. Why wear clothes? When did we stop being naked? None of it matters now. Just sleep. The psychological transformation was profound. Humans who lived permanently clothed began to feel uncomfortable when naked. Their own body felt wrong, exposed, vulnerable. Children raised in clothing from birth experienced their nakedness as a state of undress, an absence, a lack, rather than a natural condition. The covered body became the true body, the self. The naked body became something else, something animal, something shameful. They stopped being naked in their minds before they stopped in reality. This shame wasn't universal. Cultures that maintained practices of communal bathing, of ritual nudity, of casual disrobing, preserved some of the ancient comfort with bare skin. But even in these cultures, rules emerged about when and where nakedness was acceptable. It was contained, managed, separated from normal social life. Why wear clothes most of the time? Because nakedness, even acceptable nakedness, required special circumstances, special permission. Sacred nudity appeared in many religious traditions. Ritual nakedness for purification, for rebirth, for connection with divine forces. This suggests that nakedness retained spiritual power even as it lost social acceptability. The naked body was closer to nature, to truth, to the original human condition. In controlled circumstances, under specific rules, nakedness could be holy, but it had to be prescribed, formal, separated from everyday life. People stopped being casually naked, but retained sacred nakedness. Nakedness with purpose. The desexualization of certain forms of nakedness became important. Nudity in art, in medicine, in anthropology. These were framed as non-sexual, as clinical, as educational. This created a split between shameful nakedness and acceptable nakedness. The body could be seen if the context was right, if the viewer's intentions were pure, if the purpose was approved. But casual nakedness, nakedness for its own sake, remained forbidden. They stopped being naked except when nakedness served an approved function. Your eyelids so heavy now, or already closed, the darkness complete or nearly complete, the boundary between waking and sleeping dissolving. You're floating in the space between, suspended, held by the story, by the voice, by the gentle rhythm of words, drifting through the history of clothing, of covering, of stopping being naked, of starting to wear things, all of it blending, melting, fading. Climate and culture intersected in complex ways. Some societies in warm regions developed elaborate clothing despite no temperature need. Status, modesty, religious requirements, all demanded covering even when the body needed none. They started wearing clothes for reasons that had nothing to do with survival. Other societies in moderate climates maintained casual nudity, cultural values overriding practical concerns. The relationship between clothing and environment became unpredictable, mediated by beliefs, by history, by accumulated traditions. Why some societies started wearing clothes sooner than others remains partially mysterious. Geography mattered, availability of materials mattered, contact with clothed societies mattered, but some groups seemed to actively resist covering, to value nakedness as part of their identity, as something worth preserving. When colonizers demanded they dress, they complied slowly, reluctantly, maintaining their nakedness in private, in protest, in memory of who they had been. They didn't want to start wearing clothes. They refused to stop being naked, even under pressure. The loss of communal nakedness meant the loss of certain forms of intimacy, of connection, bodies in close proximity, working together, bathing together, without shame or sexual implication. These practices created bonds, trust, familiarity. When clothing became mandatory, these forms of closeness disappeared. People became isolated in their individual bodies, separated by layers of fabric, by rules about touching, by the transformation of nakedness into something inherently sexual or shameful. They stopped being naked together and lost something irreplaceable. Population density increased this pressure. In small bands of hunter-gatherers, everyone knew everyone. Bodies were familiar, unremarkable. In cities of thousands, tens of thousands, eventually millions, strangers surrounded you. Bodies became private, protected, kept from view. The intimacy possible in small groups became impossible, dangerous, in dense populations where most people were unknown. Why wear clothes in cities? Because surrounded by strangers, nakedness felt threatening, exposed, unsafe. Urbanization accelerated the covering of bodies. Cities required rules, regulations, standards of public behavior. Nakedness violated these standards, created disorder, suggested lawlessness. The clothed body was the civilized body, the urban body, the modern body. Nakedness belonged to the past, to the countryside, to the primitive. Or so the narrative went. People started wearing clothes to fit into cities, to be civilized, to be modern. They stopped being naked to become urban. Disease and hygiene beliefs also played a role, though the logic was often backwards. Some societies believed that clothing protected against illness, that covered skin was healthier. In reality, clothing often harbored bacteria, prevented skin from breathing, created moisture where infections thrived. But the belief persisted. Nakedness seemed vulnerable. Clothing seemed protective. The body was safer hidden, or so people thought. Why wear clothes? To stay healthy, even though the opposite was often true. Actually, the covered body was often less healthy. Skin needs sunlight to produce vitamin D. Covered populations, especially in northern climates, suffered deficiencies, rickets, weakened bones. The body evolved for nakedness, for direct contact with air and sun. Permanent clothing created evolutionary mismatches, problems the body wasn't designed to handle. They started wearing clothes for protection, but created new vulnerabilities in the process. Thump, thump, your heart barely audible now, just a whisper, a distant drum. You're so deep, so far into sleep, the story continuing somewhere, but you're not holding on to it, just letting it flow past, through, becoming the sound of the darkness itself, the questions about why we wear clothes, when we stopped being naked, all fading into irrelevance, into the soft, empty peace of sleep. Clothing changed human body odor. Covered skin produces different scent profiles than naked skin. Sweat trapped in fabric creates bacterial growth, distinctive smells. In permanently naked societies, bodies had their own scents, natural, varied, individual. These scents were part of communication, part of intimacy, part of knowing someone. When clothing covered the body, these scents changed, intensified in some ways. disappeared in others. The olfactory landscape of human interaction transformed. They started wearing clothes and started smelling different. Smell became something to control, to mask, to eliminate. The natural body odor was now offensive, requiring washing, perfuming, concealing. Another way in which the natural body became wrong, inadequate, in need of correction. The naked body didn't just look wrong, it smelled wrong, felt wrong, was wrong in every sensory dimension. Why wear clothes? To hide the body's smell, to mask its nature, to make it acceptable. This represents a profound alienation from our own physical form, from the body as self, as home, as the thing we are, to the body as problem, as project, as something to manage and control. This shift happened over thousands of years, but its effects persist. Modern humans often feel uncomfortable in their own skin. They don't recognize nakedness as natural, as original, as the state from which all clothing is a departure. Instead, they experience clothing as normal, and nakedness as the marked state, the unusual condition, the thing requiring explanation. They forgot why they started wearing clothes. They just know they can never stop. Temperature regulation became dependent on clothing. Bodies lost some of their ability to adapt to cold, to generate heat efficiently. Humans who lived permanently clothed, whose ancestors had worn garments for generations, couldn't survive cold as effectively as their ancient naked predecessors. The technology of clothing replaced the technology of the body, metabolic flexibility, adaptation, the capacity to endure. They started wearing clothes for warmth and lost the ability to create their own. This is an evolutionary mismatch, a situation where cultural change outpaced biological change. Our bodies are still largely designed for nakedness, for tropical climates, for the conditions under which we evolved, but we live clothed in all climates. In permanent states, our biology doesn't fully support. This creates tension, discomfort, a sense that something is slightly wrong, though we can't name what. We wear clothes because we have to, because without them we've become too fragile to survive. The skin senses evolved over millions of years to receive direct input, to feel air, temperature, touch without barriers, now receive muted information through layers of fabric. The body's largest organ, the skin, is mostly isolated from the environment, its complex sensory capacity, largely unused. We live inside shells of cloth, cut off from direct experience of the world. Why did we start wearing clothes? To survive cold, but in doing so, we dulled our primary sense organ, disconnected from reality. Your body completely relaxed now, every part soft, heavy, held by the mattress, by gravity, by sleep itself. Nothing left to release, nothing left to think, just the story continuing, somewhere far away, like a river heard from a distant valley, present but fading, fading. The tale of why we started wearing clothes, when we stopped being naked, all dissolving into the soft grey space between consciousness and dreams, the moment nakedness became exposure, when it shifted from neutral to negative, happened slowly across multiple cultures at different times, but everywhere it followed a similar pattern. Clothing became associated with civilization, with advancement, with morality. Nakedness became associated with primitivism, with animality, with sin. The naked body was the fallen body, the body before enlightenment, before culture, before humanity properly began. They started wearing clothes to become human, to rise above animals, to claim civilization. This narrative erased millions of years of human history, millions of years when nakedness was simply being human. When covering the body was the departure, the adaptation, the thing requiring explanation, the narrative flipped the script, made the exception into the rule, made the recent development seem eternal, made forgetting seem natural. They convinced themselves they'd always worn clothes, that nakedness was never normal, that covering was original. Cultural memory of naked ancestors persists in fragments, in myths about Eden, about golden ages, about innocence lost. These stories encode a dim awareness that humanity was once different, that we once lived more directly in our bodies, more connected to the physical world. The paradise we imagine, the state before the fall, is often a naked state, an uncovered state, as if some part of us remembers, even as we forget the details, remembers why we started wearing clothes. Because we lost paradise, lost innocence, lost the right to be naked. Classical art preserved images of casual nudity, Greek statues, Roman paintings, naked gods and heroes, bodies displayed without shame. These images puzzled later societies that had internalized modesty, that couldn't imagine being unashamedly bare. The art became controversial, covered with fig leaves, hidden away. The naked body in art became acceptable only as historical, as past, as something that once was but could never be again. They looked at naked statues and asked, why did we stop being like that? Why did we start wearing clothes? And found no good answers. But indigenous peoples living in ways similar to ancient humans, preserved the practice. In warm climates around the world, in the Amazon, in New Guinea, in parts of Africa, casual nudity persisted into the 20th century. Some places beyond, these societies became evidence, proof that nakedness without shame was possible, that it was humanity's long-held pattern, not an aberration, not primitive, just original. They never needed to start wearing clothes. They never stopped being naked, and they were fine. The modern fear of nudity, the discomfort, the association with sexuality and shame, all of this is new, recent, a thin layer over millions of years of different attitudes. The body underneath, your body, everybody, is still the naked body of our ancestors, still designed for a bare skin and open air. The clothing is costume, recent addition, temporary on evolutionary timescales. We started wearing clothes yesterday. In evolutionary time, we stopped being naked moments ago. What did clothing change in human behavior? Everything and nothing. We're still the same species, the same basic needs and desires. But we experience ourselves differently. We've internalized the idea that our body is something to hide, to protect, to be ashamed of. This changes how we move through the world, how we relate to others, how we understand ourselves. The covered life is a different life, even if the biology underneath remains unchanged. We started wearing clothes for practical reasons, but those reasons created psychological changes we never anticipated. Did clothing slow human evolution? Possibly, by allowing us to survive in any climate. Clothing reduced environmental pressures, reduced the need for biological adaptation. We could live in the Arctic with the same body that evolved in Africa. The clothing adapted, not the body. This may have frozen certain aspects of our evolution, prevented changes that would otherwise have occurred over the past 40,000 years. We started wearing clothes and stopped evolving. The body is something to hide. This belief is perhaps the most significant transformation. For most of human existence, the body was simply what we were, obvious, unavoidable, neutral. Now it's a secret, something private, something that requires justification to reveal. This transformation rewired human psychology, created new categories of shame, new forms of vulnerability, new mechanisms of social control. We started wearing clothes to survive, but ended up hiding from ourselves. The first time nakedness felt wrong, this moment happened differently for every culture, every individual. But for all of us, somewhere in our childhood or adolescence, we learned that our body should be hidden. We learned to feel exposed, to feel the need for covering, to experience our own skin as insufficient. This learning is so thorough we forget it happened. We think modesty is natural, instinctive. We forget that we had to be taught why to wear clothes, taught when to stop being naked, taught to fear our own bodies. Your breathing barely perceptible now, so slow, so soft, just the gentlest movement, in, out, the story dissolving into sound, into rhythm. The facts no longer matter, the dates, the details, the reasons for wearing clothes, the moment we stopped being naked, all of it melting away, becoming part of the darkness, part of sleep. You're drifting through nakedness and clothing, through shame and innocence, through millions of years, collapsing into this moment, this breath, this quiet darkness where you rest, the weight of fabric on skin. This became normal, expected, required. But there was a time before this, when weight on skin meant danger, an animal landing, a threat. Naked skin was alert skin, sensitive skin, aware. Now we spend our lives under layers. The body dulled, numb to everything except the pressure of cloth. We started wearing clothes for protection, but ended up trapped beneath them. Let that pressure relax now. If you're under blankets, feel them just resting, not restricting. Your body underneath, still there, still yours. Let it sink deeper into softness, into support. Nothing to hold, nothing to maintain, just drifting, floating in this space between stories, between sleep and waking, between the reasons we wear clothes and the moment we stop being naked. Footwear changed human feet. When feet were always bare, they developed thick calluses, wide toes, strong arches. Feet shaped themselves to the ground they walked on, hard, rocky, uneven. The naked foot was a capable foot, adaptable, resilient. It could feel texture, temperature, moisture. The foot was in direct conversation with the earth, every step carrying information, feedback, connection. Why wear shoes? There was no need. The first footwear appeared perhaps 40,000 years ago. Earlier, some people wrapped their feet in hides during cold weather, but these weren't really shoes, just temporary protection. True footwear, shaped to the foot, staying in place during movement, required sewing, required needles, required technical skill that took millennia to develop. Humans started wearing shoes because they'd invented a way to keep them on, because the technology finally existed. Shoes changed everything about human feet. They weakened, narrowed, the toes compressed together, the arch, no longer supporting the body's weight directly, became lazy, dependent. Modern human feet can barely walk barefoot on rough terrain. They've forgotten how, lost the adaptations, become prisoners of the shoes that protect them. We started wearing shoes, and our feet stopped being feet, became something else, something fragile, dependent. But for most of human history, feet were naked. They felt the world directly. The ground was home, familiar, not something to fear or avoid. Children learn to walk on bare feet, never knowing the restriction of shoes. Their first steps were direct contact, unmediated, feeling everything. This was normal, natural. The only way feet had ever known the world. They never asked why wear shoes, because shoes didn't exist. When they finally appeared, the question became, why would you? Thump, thump, your heart rhythm steady, so slow, pulling you deeper, like waves pulling sand from shore, each breath taking you further out, further down, into the deep water of sleep, just floating now, weightless, supported. The story of covering, of stopping being naked, of starting to wear things, all washing over you, through you. When clothing became habitual, when it transitioned from tool to identity, something shifted in human consciousness. The covered body became the social body's, the public self. The naked body became private, hidden, known only in intimate circumstances or in solitude. This split created a duality, a separation between the body we show the world and the body we actually inhabit. We stopped being naked publicly, but remained naked privately. The split became who we are. This duality generates psychological tension. We present one body to the world, clothed, shaped by fabric and fashion. But underneath we know the real body, softer, stranger, more variable than the clothed form suggests. We live in two bodies simultaneously, the visible one and the hidden one, and we're taught that the hidden one is shameful, insufficient, wrong. Why wear clothes? To hide the real body, to present an acceptable version, to maintain the illusion. Children experience this split as they grow. They transition from bodies that adults dress and manage to bodies they must dress themselves, to bodies they must hide themselves. By adolescence, the separation is complete. The naked body is secret, private, laden with meaning and shame. The casual nakedness of childhood, if it existed at all, is gone, replaced by vigilant covering, constant awareness of exposure. They start wearing clothes before they understand why, and never question it again. The moment when a child first feels shame about their body, this is a profound transformation. Before this moment, the body is simply self. After this moment, the body is something to manage, to hide, to feel anxious about. This transition happens at different ages in different cultures, but it happens everywhere that clothing is mandatory. The innocent body becomes the shameful body. The transformation is learned, but it feels inevitable, natural, right. They stop being naked innocently and become clothed shamefully. Let your jaw soften if it's holding tension. Let your face go smooth, blank, like water. No expression needed, no presentation required. Just your body in darkness, unknown to anyone but you. And even you can forget it now. Let it dissolve into sleep. No reason to wear clothes here. No reason to cover. Just the soft dissolution into rest. Clothing and sexual selection became intertwined. In permanently clothed societies, choosing a partner happened between clothed people. Bodies were theoretical, imagined. The actual body, revealed only in private, could surprise, disappoint, disrupt the attraction formed to the clothed person. This created new anxieties, new pressures to make the naked body match expectations formed by the clothed body. Why wear clothes in courtship? To present an idealized version, to hide imperfections, to control first impressions. In naked societies, this anxiety didn't exist. Bodies were visible, known, familiar before intimacy occurred. There were no surprises, no revelations, no gap between the public and private form. Sexual selection happened based on the actual body, not the presented body. This was more honest, more direct, though modern sensibilities find it shocking, inappropriate. They never needed to start wearing clothes to attract mates. The naked body was enough. The desexualization of certain body parts required clothing: breasts, reproductive organs, buttocks. These became sexual partly because they were hidden. Their concealment made them mysterious, powerful, charged with meaning they might not have carried if always visible. In societies where women's breasts are routinely bare, they're not particularly sexual. They're just breasts, functional, ordinary. The covering creates the eroticization, not the body part itself. We started wearing clothes and created sexuality as we know it. This suggests that shame and desire are linked, that hiding the body generates the obsession with revealing it, that the forbidden becomes compelling specifically because it's forbidden. If nakedness had remained normal, casual, unremarkable, much of the sexual charge around the body would never have developed. The body would be more neutral, less fraught, less powerful in both positive and negative ways. We stopped being naked and made nakedness sensual. Your thoughts scattering now like leaves, drifting away. You can't hold them, don't need to hold them. Just let everything go. The story flowing past, through, becoming background, becoming the texture of darkness, of sleep. Nothing to remember, nothing to understand. Just drift through the reasons, the transformations, the long, slow shift from naked to clothed. The role of agriculture in permanent clothing can't be overstated. Farming created surplus. Surplus created trade. Trade created complex economies. Complex economies required standard measures, predictable behaviors, social hierarchies. Clothing became part of this system. It indicated wealth, occupation, status, tribal affiliation. A glance at someone's clothing told you how to interact with them, what to expect, where they fit in the social order, why wear specific clothes, to communicate who you are without words. This made clothing mandatory, not just for warmth, but for social function. Being naked in an agricultural society, especially an urban agricultural society, was opting out of the communication system. It rendered you illegible, dangerous, outside the social contract. Nakedness became not just immodest but socially disruptive, incomprehensible, threatening to the order of things. They stopped being naked because naked people couldn't function in complex societies, couldn't be read, understood, categorized. Settlements and private property also played a role. When humans lived nomadically, possessions were minimal, burden, weight to carry. Clothing was one possession among few, easily discarded if it became inconvenient, but settled people accumulated things, including clothing. They stored it, maintained it, invested labor in its creation. Clothing became valuable, a form of wealth, something you owned and displayed, not just something you used. Why wear clothes? Because they're valuable, because they represent labor, investment, wealth. This transformed the relationship between people and clothes. Clothing became an extension of self, an investment, an asset. You didn't just wear it, you possessed it. It was yours, part of your identity and your property. Removing it wasn't just becoming naked, it was losing something, becoming poorer, less established, less secure. People started wearing clothes as property and stopped being naked as a form of wealth display. The first textiles created entirely new possibilities and entirely new burdens. Fabric required cultivation of fiber plants, processing, spinning, weaving, dyeing, cutting, sewing. Textile production involved countless hours of labor, mostly by women. This labor became invisible, normalized, expected. The clothing that covered bodies represented huge amounts of uncounted work. Women's work, maintaining the social fiction that nakedness was unacceptable. They started wearing textiles because women spent lifetimes making them. Thump, thump. Barely there now. Your heartbeat fading into the general rhythm of sleep. The boundary between you and the darkness dissolving. You're becoming the darkness, part of it, inseparable. The story continuing somewhere but not in your mind, just in the air, in the night, drifting, drifting, explaining why we wear what we wear, when we stopped being what we were. Linen was one of the earliest fabrics, made from flax plants, cultivated in the Fertile Crescent around 9,000 years ago. Linen was prized for its coolness, its ability to wick moisture away from skin in hot climates. Linen allowed people to stay covered without overheating. This meant modesty could be maintained even in temperatures where nudity would be more comfortable. Culture could override climate. Belief could trump biology. Why wear linen? To stay covered without dying of heat. The ancient Egyptians wore linen, white linen, often pleated. The wealthy wore fine linen, nearly transparent, while still being technically clothed. This suggests they valued covering while missing nakedness. The compromise was sheer fabric, technically modest, practically revealing. The body visible but veiled, a negotiation between ancient comfort with nakedness and newer requirements for covering. They started wearing see-through clothes, trying to have it both ways. Cotton developed independently in several regions. The Indus Valley, Mesoamerica. The plant produces fibers that are soft, breathable, easy to work with. Cotton became the fabric of everyday life for millions of people. It was affordable enough for common people, comfortable enough for constant wearing. Cotton made clothing accessible, universal, inescapable. Why wear cotton? 'Cause everyone could. 'Cause it was cheap, comfortable, everywhere. With cotton, with linen, with accessible textiles, everyone could be clothed. There was no economic excuse for nakedness, no practical barrier. Clothing became universal not because everyone wanted it, but because everyone could have it. The option to be naked, even in warm weather, even in private, even where it made practical sense, disappeared. Covering was now possible, therefore mandatory. The logic was circular but powerful. They started wearing clothes because they could afford to. They stopped being naked because nakedness became economically unnecessary. Let your whole body go heavy now, sinking into the mattress like stone into water. Heavy, heavier, everything soft, surrendered. You're not holding your body up anymore. Gravity does the work. The mattress does the work. You just rest. Deeper, deeper into this soft, dark place where nothing is required of you, where you don't need reasons to wear anything, to be anything. Clothing and gender roles became inseparable. Different garments for men and women reinforced and communicated gender divisions. A man in women's clothing, a woman in men's clothing. These were transgressions, violations of the natural order as societies understood it. The clothing created the gender as much as the gender dictated the clothing. Without the visible markers, the categories became unstable, uncertain, dangerous. Why wear gendered clothing? To make gender visible, permanent, undeniable. This meant that nakedness threatened gender itself. The naked body, especially before puberty, was often ambiguous. The clothing made it clear, made it knowable, made it safe. Children were dressed according to their assigned sex to prevent confusion, to train them, to mark them as belonging to one category or the other. The naked child was too indeterminate, too fluid, too much a blank slate. They started wearing gendered clothes from birth, stopped being naked and ambiguous, became categorized, fixed. Differentiated dress began early in agricultural societies. By 4,000 years ago, most settled cultures had distinct male and female clothing. The division varied by region, by climate, by available materials. But the principle was universal. Bodies must be marked by their covering, sorted into categories, made legible at a glance. The work of clothing was the work of social order, of maintaining boundaries, of preventing chaos. They wore different clothes to maintain different roles, stopped being simply naked humans, became gendered clothed beings. Fertility symbolism in clothing was common. Women's garments often emphasized breasts, hips, the parts associated with reproduction. Men's garments often emphasized shoulders, height, physical power. The clothing didn't just cover, it communicated, it advertised. It performed the work of sexual selection that would have happened through naked bodies in earlier times. The fabric became the body. The body underneath became irrelevant. Why wear fertility signaling clothes? Because the real body was now hidden, needed representation, needed advertising. This created a strange inversion. The actual physical form mattered less than the form suggested by clothing. A woman could appear fertile, appear desirable, through the cut and drape of her garments, regardless of her actual body. A man could appear powerful through the structure of his clothing, regardless of his actual physique. The clothing lied, and the lie became truth, or at least became more socially relevant than the truth hidden beneath. They started wearing lies, stopped being naked truths. Your eyelids motionless now, the darkness behind them complete. Or perhaps your eye is already open but unseeing, staring into nothing. The difference doesn't matter. Sleep and waking merge, become the same soft state. The voice continues, but you're not listening. Not really. Just floating on the sound, like floating on water, supported, safe, drifting through the story of covering and concealing. Nakedness in ritual persisted long after everyday nakedness disappeared. Sacred contexts preserved the ancient practice. Purification rites often required nudity. Participants would remove all clothing, wash, be blessed, then redress. This was nakedness with purpose, with boundaries, with rules. It was not casual nakedness, not comfortable nakedness, but prescribed nakedness, contained, controlled, safe within ritual structure. Why be naked in rituals? To access something ancient, something true, something lost in daily clothed life. Religious ceremonies in various traditions included sacred nudity, Hindu sadhus, Greek mystery cults, early Christian baptisms. The removal of clothing symbolized removal of social identity, of status, of the constructed self. The naked body was the true self, the soul made visible, the person before they became a person. This suggests that nakedness retained spiritual power even as it lost social acceptability, that the naked body was still recognized as more authentic, more primal, more connected to fundamental reality. They stopped being naked in life, but remained naked before God. But this sacred nudity was different from the casual nakedness of earlier times. It was marked, special, temporary. The moment the ritual ended, clothing was restored, social identity was restored. The naked state was a threshold, a transition, not a destination. This contrasts sharply with ancient humans for whom nakedness was simply being, not a spiritual state or a ritual act, just existence in the normal form. They started wearing ritual nakedness, very different from never wearing anything at all. The transition from casual to ritual nudity represents a crucial shift. When nakedness becomes ritualized, it's no longer truly naked, it's performing nakedness, representing nakedness, invoking the memory of nakedness, but it's not the unconscious, unremarked nakedness of children playing or adults working in warm weather. It's conscious, deliberate, laden with meaning the original nakedness never carried. They stopped being casually naked, started being ceremonially naked. The difference is everything. In some cultures, ritual nudity was required for warriors before battle. The naked body was vulnerable, but also powerful, unencumbered, direct. Stripping away clothing stripped away civilization, revealed the animal underneath, the killer, the survivor. This was strategic nakedness, weaponized nakedness. Again, not the neutral nakedness of earlier human existence, but nakedness as tool, as symbol, as chosen state rather than default state. Why be naked for war? To become animal again, to access primal ferocity, to stop being civilized. Let your shoulders melt down, away from your ears. Let your whole upper back soften, spread, every vertebra settling, releasing. There's a slight space between each bone now. Room, air, freedom. Your spine lengthening, relaxing. You're becoming liquid, formless, no body, just sensation, just the slow drift towards sleep. through the history of covering and revealing. When nudity became forbidden, when laws were written to mandate clothing, this represented a new level of social control. It wasn't enough for culture to encourage covering, for social pressure to make nakedness uncomfortable. The state, the government, the official power structure declared nakedness illegal, punishable. Wrong in the eyes of the law, they made it illegal to stop wearing clothes, illegal to be naked. Nakedness became a crime. These laws appeared in different places at different times, often imposed by colonial powers on indigenous peoples, often emerging in religious contexts, declaring the naked body sinful, offensive to God, requiring concealment for spiritual reasons. The laws transformed nakedness from social choice to legal violation, from personal state to public crime. Why wear clothes? Because the law says you must. Because nakedness is now criminal. Because you can be arrested for being what humans were for millions of years. Enforcement of these laws was selective, inconsistent, often targeting the poor, the marginalized, those without power to resist. The wealthy could be naked in private, in bathhouses, in designated spaces, but the poor, especially in public spaces, faced punishment for behavior that had been normal, natural, universal for most of human history. The laws created new forms of inequality, new mechanisms of control. They started wearing clothes under threat of punishment, stopped being naked under threat of violence. Urbanization accelerated this process. Cities needed order, predictability, standards. Naked bodies in crowded streets seemed chaotic, threatening. Cities passed public decency ordinances, required clothing in all public spaces. The urban body became the covered body by necessity, by law, by force. Cities were machines for producing shame about nakedness, for training people to see their own body as problem. Why wear clothes in cities? Because city life requires it, demands it, enforces it through law and shame. Population density created situations where strangers constantly encountered each other. In small communities, everyone knew everyone. Bodies were familiar, trustworthy. But in cities, surrounded by strangers, the naked body became vulnerable, exposable. The covering wasn't just about temperature or modesty. It was protection, armor, boundary between self and the threatening multitude of unknown others. They started wearing clothes as protection from other people's eyes. Stopped being naked because cities were full of strangers who might look, might judge, might threaten. Disease beliefs amplified this. During plague years, during epidemics, people believed that covering the body protected against infection, that exposed skin invited disease. The logic was backwards. Clothing often harbored the very parasites and bacteria that spread illness. But the belief persisted. Nakedness seemed vulnerable to disease. Clothing seemed like defense. The covered body was the safe body, or so people desperately hoped. Why wear clothes during plagues? To feel protected, even if the protection was illusion, even if clothes made things worse. Thump, thump, so faint now, like a drum heard through water, through walls, through the layers of sleep settling over you. You're deep, so deep. The story just echoes, vibrations in the dark, nothing to follow, nothing to hold. Just let it flow, past, through, gone. The reasons for wearing clothes, for stopping being naked, all dissolving into the soft grey void of sleep. Clothing as protection from insects made sense in some environments. Mosquitoes, ticks, biting flies. These could be deadly, carriers of malaria, of sleeping sickness, of Lyme disease. In regions where insect-borne diseases were common, clothing provided real protection. This was functional, practical, different from the moral arguments against nakedness, different from shame and modesty, just survival, just reducing the chance that a bite would kill you or those you loved. Why wear clothes in jungles? To keep the insects off your skin, to survive. But even this practical use became culturally encoded. People in insect-heavy regions developed expectations that bodies should be covered, even when indoors, even when insects weren't present, even in seasons when they weren't active. The covering became habitual. The practical origin was forgotten. The covering just felt right, necessary. The alternative felt wrong, dangerous, even when it wasn't. They started wearing clothes for bugs, kept wearing them for habit. This shows how functional adaptations become cultural norms, how practical solutions become moral imperatives. The lane between choosing to cover for utility and feeling compelled to cover for propriety, this line blurred and disappeared. By the time most cultures reached modernity, no one could separate the practical from the moral from the psychological. It was all tangled together. Clothing as necessity and virtue and identity all at once. They forgot why they started wearing clothes, just knew they couldn't stop. The psychology of being clothed is complex. Clothing provides psychological comfort, a sense of security, of being protected and prepared. But it also creates anxiety, the fear of exposure, the constant awareness of covering, the need to maintain the boundary between hidden and shown. In permanently clothed societies, people feel naked even when technically covered, if their clothing is insufficient by cultural standards. The anxiety isn't about actual nakedness. It's about relative exposure, about failing to meet expectations. Why wear more clothes? Because what you're wearing isn't enough. Because exposure is relative. Because you can never be covered enough. Self-consciousness increased dramatically with permanent clothing. When everyone is naked, no one is particularly aware of their body. It's just normal. But when some are clothed and some aren't, or when everyone is clothed to different degrees, comparison becomes possible. Judgment becomes possible. The covered body creates the concept of the exposed body. The categories generate each other, require each other, can't exist independently. They started wearing clothes and became self-conscious. They stopped being naked and started being aware of every imperfection. Mirrors amplified this self-consciousness when humans began to see themselves regularly, clearly as others saw them. Body awareness transformed. People could critique their own appearance, notice flaws, compare themselves to ideals. The mirror created the modern relationship to the body, anxious, analytical, never satisfied. This wouldn't have been possible with casual nakedness and no mirrors. The combination of covering and reflecting created the conditions for body dysmorphia, for eating disorders, for the epidemic of body hatred that characterizes modern life. They started wearing clothes and looking in mirrors, stopped being naked and comfortable, became clothed and tortured. Let your hips soften, let your legs feel heavy, so heavy, thighs sinking, calves relaxing, all the tiny muscles in your feet releasing, going soft, your whole lower body melting into the bed, becoming part of it. No boundary, no separation, just weight, just warmth, just the slow pull down into sleep where reasons don't matter, where history doesn't matter, where you simply are. When humans began to hide their bodies, this represented a fundamental shift in self-concept. For millions of years, the body was self, obvious, known to everyone, including yourself. But the hidden body became mysterious, private, separate from public identity. You had a public self, clothed, presentable, and a private self, naked, hidden, shameful, or at least vulnerable. This split created modern consciousness, the divided self, the awareness of inner and outer, of what's shown and what's concealed. Why hide your body? Because showing it became dangerous, because concealing became identity. Children raised with permanent clothing from birth never experienced the unity of naked self-concept. They learn the division early. They understand themselves as having layers, a presented self and a hidden self. This shapes everything about how they move through the world, how they relate to others, how they understand privacy and intimacy. The covered childhood creates the covered consciousness, the sense that the real self is always somewhat hidden. They start wearing clothes before they can remember, stop being naked before they know what naked means. Nakedness and vulnerability to judgment became linked. The naked body could be evaluated, criticized, found lacking. Clothing provided protection from this judgment. It shaped the body, concealed the body, created a version of the body that might be acceptable even if the actual body underneath wasn't. This made clothing feel necessary, psychologically necessary. The naked body was the judged body, the rejected body, the failed body. Clothing was defense, disguise, armor against the cruelty of others' eyes. Why wear clothes? Because without them you can be judged, criticized, rejected. Because naked you're vulnerable to truth. This fear is historically recent. For most of human history, judgment of naked bodies wasn't a concern because naked bodies were universal, normal. Everyone saw everyone. There was variation, but there was also familiarity, acceptance. Bodies weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. They were just bodies. The modern fear of bodily judgment emerged with permanent clothing, with the creation of standards based on covered shapes rather than natural variety. They started wearing clothes and created the conditions for body hatred. They stopped being naked and learned to fear their own flesh. Clothing and power remain intertwined in complex ways. The powerful have always controlled who can wear what. Sumptuary laws dictated which fabrics, which colours, which styles were available to which social classes. The wealthy could wear fine cloth, bright dyes, complex constructions. The poor were limited to rough fabric, dull colours, simple designs. Clothing communicated status immediately, unavoidably. Your position in the hierarchy was visible, readable, enforced through what you wore. Why wear expensive clothes? To show power, to claim status, to mark yourself as above others. But nakedness was also used as control. Slaves kept naked or semi-naked, prisoners stripped of clothing, defeated enemies forced to strip. Nakedness in these contexts was humiliation, degradation, removal of personhood. The naked body was the powerless body, the controlled body, the body without rights or dignity. This transformed nakedness from neutral to negative, from natural to shameful. The association of nakedness with powerlessness taught everyone to fear exposure, to see covering as essential to being fully human. They stopped being naked because nakedness became the mark of the powerless. Your breath so shallow now, so quiet, barely moving air, just the gentlest exchange, in, out, the body breathing itself, no effort, no awareness, just the autonomic rhythm, the background process, the life continuing while you sleep. Deeper, deeper into the soft darkness, into the story that's no longer a story, just sound, just vibration, just the texture of night wrapping around the tale of covering and concealing. Who was allowed to be naked varied dramatically by culture and power. In some ancient societies, slaves worked naked regardless of climate. Their nakedness marked them as property, as less than fully human. In other contexts, the poor were naked because they couldn't afford clothing. Their nakedness marked them as failures, as unable to achieve basic standards of civilization. Either way, nakedness became associated with lowness, with lack, with shame. Why wear clothes? Because only free people can. Because clothing marks you as human, as deserving dignity. Forced nakedness as punishment persisted into modern times. Prisoners stripped, paraded naked, displayed to break their spirit. Nakedness made them vulnerable, exposed, unable to maintain dignity. The removal of clothing was removal of humanity. This practice appears across cultures, across time periods, suggesting something universal about clothing's relationship to personhood. Without clothing, the person becomes just body, just flesh, just animal. They stopped being clothed and stopped being human in society's eyes. The power to remain clothed became a marker of freedom, of autonomy, of being fully human in society's eyes. Those who could choose their covering, maintain it, protect it from removal, these were the free people, the powerful people, the real people. Those who were kept naked or forced naked, these were the controlled, the powerless, the less than human. Clothing became inseparable from liberty, from selfhood, from basic dignity. Why wear clothes? To claim your humanity, to assert your freedom, to declare yourself worthy of respect. This made nakedness terrifying. Even casual nakedness, even chosen nakedness, carried echoes of these power dynamics. To be naked was to be vulnerable, to be potentially controlled, to risk being seen as less than fully human. The ancient ease with nakedness became impossible once these associations were established. The covered body was the protected body, the powerful body, the free body. Nakedness, by contrast, meant exposure, danger, subjugation. They started wearing clothes to claim power, stopped being naked to claim freedom. Children and innocents had a complicated relationship. Very young children were often allowed nakedness that older children and adults were not. This created the concept of innocent nudity versus sexual nudity. The child's naked body was pure, innocent, non-threatening. But at some point, usually around puberty, the child's nakedness stopped being innocent and became sexual, dangerous, shameful. The transition was marked by insistence on covering. Why start wearing clothes? Because you're no longer innocent. Because your body became sexual. Because nakedness means something different now. This transition happened earlier and earlier as modernity progressed. Victorian children were dressed from infancy, kept covered constantly. Their bodies were potential sources of shame from the earliest ages. Modern children in many cultures are dressed immediately, sometimes within minutes of birth. The naked infant disappeared, replaced by the clothed infant, the covered infant, the infant already being trained to see their body as something to hide. They start wearing clothes before they can walk. Stop being naked before they can understand what naked means. When children began dressing earlier, when the period of innocent nakedness shortened and disappeared, this represented the full victory of clothing culture. If even babies must be covered, if even toddlers feel shame about exposure, then nakedness has been truly eliminated, made unnatural, made wrong at the deepest level. The covered childhood produces the covered adult, the person who cannot imagine being any other way. Why do babies wear clothes? Because even innocent nakedness became unacceptable. Because covering starts at birth now. Because we've forgotten there was ever another way. Nakedness and sexuality separation became important in later periods. The argument emerged that non-sexual nakedness was possible, that bodies could be visible without being eroticized. Nudist movements, naturist colonies, these attempted to reclaim casual nakedness, to separate the naked body from sexual meaning, with mixed success. Why try to be naked non-sexually? To recover something lost, to access the ancient ease, to prove nakedness doesn't have to mean what society says it means. The difficulty was that permanent clothing had already eroticized the hidden body. The covered body created the sexual charge around the naked body. Once this charge was established, removing it was nearly impossible. The naked body in nudist colonies was supposed to be neutral, but it carried all the cultural weight of being usually hidden. The attempt to reclaim ancient casualness couldn't work because too much had changed. The meaning of nakedness had transformed irreversibly. They tried to stop wearing clothes casually again, tried to be naked without meaning, but the meaning couldn't be removed. Let your neck lengthen, let your head feel heavy on the pillow, supported, held, your scalp loose, your forehead smooth, all the tiny muscles around your eyes releasing, softening, your face going blank, empty, peaceful, just a face, nobody's face, nothing to express, nothing to show, just the slow drift deeper into sleep, into darkness, into nothing where clothing and nakedness both cease to exist. The desexualized naked body exists primarily in specific contexts: medical settings, art, anthropology. In these contexts, nakedness is framed as non-sexual through ritual, through professional distance, through intellectual framing. But outside these carefully controlled contexts, nakedness remains highly charged. The casual, non-sexual nakedness of earlier human societies cannot be recovered. The attempt generates either discomfort or eroticism, rarely the ancient neutrality. Why is it so hard to be casually naked? Because we've lost the cultural framework. Because nakedness means too much now. Because we can't stop seeing what we've been taught to see. Art and nakedness preserve some connection to earlier attitudes. Cave paintings show unclothed humans casually, matter-of-factly. Their nakedness is not emphasized or eroticized, just depicted. Classical Greek and Roman art similarly showed naked bodies as normal, beautiful, worthy of representation. This suggests that even after clothing became common, some societies retained comfort with seeing the naked form, at least in representation, at least at a remove. They started wearing clothes, but kept depicting nakedness in art, maintaining a connection to what was lost. But later periods found even artistic nudity troubling. Fig leaves were added to classical statues. Nude paintings were hidden or destroyed. The naked body in art became controversial, acceptable only in specific approved contexts. The Venus de Milo was art, acceptable. But similar images in other contexts were explicit material, illegal. The distinction was often arbitrary, about framing and context rather than the image itself. They couldn't even look at artistic nakedness without discomfort. So thoroughly had they internalized the shame. Cave art showing unclothed humans dates back tens of thousands of years. These images are not sensual. not focused on sexuality. The humans are just there, naked as they would have been in life, doing things, hunting, dancing, existing. The casualness of the depiction tells us the artist saw nothing remarkable about naked bodies. They were just recording life, and life was lived unclothed. The remarkable thing to them might have been clothing, had anyone been wearing it, not nakedness. They drew naked people because that's what people were, naked. Classical nudity versus prehistoric nudity differs in one key way. Classical nudity was often idealized, perfected. The sculptures show bodies without flaws, without variation, perfect proportions, perfect muscles. This suggests that by classical times, the naked body had already become special, worthy of idealization rather than simple representation. The comfort with seeing naked bodies existed, but it was mediated through idealization, through perfection, not the casual acceptance of normal, varied human forms. They accepted artistic nakedness, but only if the bodies were perfect. They'd already started judging, comparing, ranking the naked form. Thump, thump, your heart so faint, like the flutter of a moth's wing, like breath on glass, barely there. You're almost gone now, almost fully asleep. The story continuing, but you're not hearing it, not consciously. It's becoming your dreams, your thoughts, the landscape of your sleeping mind. Nothing to hold on to, nothing to remember, just drift, just float, just be. Beyond reasons, beyond history, beyond the question of why we wear anything at all. Cultural memory of naked ancestors lives in fragments, in stories we tell without quite knowing why. The Garden of Eden, the Golden Age, the time before time. In many of these myths, humans were originally naked, innocent, unashamed. The covering came later, with knowledge, with sin, with the fall from grace. These stories encode memory, deep memory, of when being human meant being bare, of when there was no reason to wear clothes, when stopping being naked hadn't happened yet. The myths tell us something true, even if not literally true. They tell us we remember somewhere that we were different once, that the covered self is not the original self, that shame about the body is learned, imported, not innate. The stories whisper across millennia, reminding us, if we listen, if we let ourselves drift into them, they answer the question, why did we start wearing clothes? Because we fell, because we learned shame, because paradise was lost. Just let your mind drift now, not holding on to any thought, not following any thread, just floating in the space between ideas, between words, the darkness complete or near complete. You're deep in sleep or near sleep. The boundary disappeared. Everything soft, liquid, merging. No need for answers, no need for reasons. Just the soft dissolution of questions into sleep. Evolutionary mismatch defines much of modern human existence. We live in conditions radically different from those under which we evolved. We're designed for movement, but we sit. Designed for whole foods, but we eat processed, designed for tribal groups, but we live in cities. And we're designed for nakedness, but we live clothed. This last mismatch is perhaps the most invisible, the most thoroughly naturalized. We don't even recognize it as a mismatch. We think we were always meant to wear clothes, always meant to stop being naked, but we weren't. Our skin, our largest organ, evolved for direct contact with air, with sun, with water, with the environment. It has complex sensory capacities, temperature sensors, pressure sensors, pain receptors, all designed to interface directly with the world. But we keep it covered, isolated, receiving only muted information through layers of fabric. The skin is unemployed, its capabilities mostly unused. This is evolutionary mismatch, the body capable of things it no longer does. Why wear clothes? We shouldn't biologically, but culturally we must. Vitamin D production requires sunlight on bare skin. Our bodies synthesized this vitamin naturally when we lived naked under tropical sun, but covered populations, especially in northern latitudes, struggle with deficiency. We need supplements, fortified foods, medical interventions, because our skin doesn't receive the light it was designed to receive. This is a small thing, but it illustrates the pattern. Clothing solves one problem while creating others. The body pays prices we barely notice. We started wearing clothes for warmth and created vitamin deficiencies we're still trying to solve. Skin senses in covered bodies atrophy through disuse. People who live permanently clothed lose sensitivity, lose the ability to detect subtle temperature changes, lose the direct intimacy with the environment that naked skin provides. This is adaptation to the adapted state, the body learning to function in a condition it wasn't designed for, doing its best, but losing something in the process. They stopped being naked, and their skin forgot how to be fully alive. Let your attention float away from the words. You don't need to listen anymore, don't need to follow. The story continues, but you're not here. Not really. You've drifted past consciousness, into the soft grey space where the mind rests, where thoughts dissolve before forming, where there's only the gentle hum of existence, the slow pulse, the quiet dark, beyond questions of clothing and nakedness, beyond reasons, beyond history. Temperature regulation after clothing became dependent on garments rather than metabolism. Humans lost some of their natural capacity to adapt to cold, to generate heat efficiently through metabolic processes. We outsourced thermoregulation to technology, to layers of fabric, to controlled environments. This made us vulnerable in new ways, dependent on maintaining our clothing, our shelters, our artificial climate control. The naked body, once capable of enduring significant temperature ranges, became fragile, unable to function outside narrow comfort zones without technological assistance. Why wear clothes? Because without them we can't survive anymore. We've lost the ability, But this is the pattern of all technology. It enhances one capacity while diminishing another. It creates dependence even as it creates freedom. Clothing allowed humans to live anywhere, but made them unable to live naked anywhere. The trade was profound, irreversible. We can't go back. The bodies shaped by permanent clothing across hundreds of generations have lost what they once had. The ancient resilience, gone, replaced by reliance on materials, on garments, on the technology of covering. We started wearing clothes and forgot how not to. Clothing and body odor changed human chemistry. The naked body in open air has a certain scent profile. Natural, varying by individual, diet, health. This scent was part of human communication for millions of years, part of attraction, part of recognition, part of social bonding, but clothing changed everything. Sweat trapped in fabric creates bacterial growth, different smells, often stronger, often unpleasant. The natural body odor disappeared, replaced by the smell of covered bodies, of fabric, of trapped moisture. Why wear clothes? Not for the smell. The smell got worse. Modern humans spend enormous effort controlling body odor, washing constantly, applying deodorants and perfumes, trying to eliminate the smell the clothing helps create. This is circular, absurd, but normalized. We don't recognize that the problem is partly the solution, that nakedness would reduce the need for so much olfactory management. We think the body naturally smells bad, when actually it's the covered body that smells bad. The naked body, in open air, smelled different, probably better, certainly more natural. They started wearing clothes and started smelling worse. Then spent centuries trying to mask the smell clothes created. Smell in naked societies was more varied, more individual, more accepted. Bodies had their scents. These were part of identity, part of intimacy, part of knowing someone. Modern deodorized covered society has eliminated this. Everyone smells like soap, like perfume, like products. The individual scent signature, lost, replaced by commercial fragrances, by the smell of cleanliness, by olfactory uniformity. They stopped being naked and stopped smelling like themselves. Thump, thump, barely audible. Your heart so slow, so quiet. Each beat separated by vast space, by silence, by the soft, empty darkness between one moment and the next. You're floating in that space, in the gaps, in the quiet between heartbeats, between breaths, suspended, held by nothing, needing nothing, just being, just drifting, endlessly, through the tale of why we cover ourselves when we stopped being bare. The loss of communal nakedness meant the loss of certain intimacies, of connection. In societies where people bathed together, worked together naked in hot weather, lived in close quarters without privacy, bodies became familiar, comfortable, known. This created trust, connection, the ease that comes from having no secrets about the basic physical form. Everyone knew everyone's body. There was nothing to hide, nothing to reveal, nothing to be anxious about. Why wear clothes alone together? There was no reason. Nakedness was sharing, was trust, was community. Modern privacy culture eliminated this. Bodies became private, hidden, known only to intimate partners or medical professionals. This created isolation, each person alone in their body, unable to share the physical reality of being human with others in casual, non-sexual, comfortable ways. The covered culture is the isolated culture, each person separate, each body secret, each self alone inside the hidden flesh. They started wearing clothes and became lonely in ways earlier humans never were. Isolated inside private bodies. Private versus public bodies created the split that defines modern consciousness. You have your public body, the one you show the world, clothed, managed, controlled, and you have your private body, the one you inhabit alone, the one that shames you, that doesn't meet standards, that must be hidden. These two bodies are the same body, but they feel different. They are different in the experiencing. The split is real even if the body is one. Why wear clothes publicly? To maintain the split, to keep the private body private, to present the acceptable version while hiding the real one. This split generates enormous psychological suffering. The gap between presented self and hidden self, between the body you show and the body you are. This gap is where insecurity lives, where body dysmorphia breeds, where shame takes root and grows. The unified self, the naked self, doesn't have this problem. What you are is what everyone sees. There's no gap, no split, no space for the shame to hide. They stopped being unified naked selves, became split-clothed selves, and suffered for it. But we can't go back. The innocence is lost. The millions of years of casual nakedness, overwritten by thousands of years of clothing culture. The psychological transformation is too deep, too thorough. Even people who choose nudity as adults, who practice naturism, who reject clothing when possible, they still carry the cultural conditioning, the learned shame, the awareness that nakedness is marked, special, different. The ancient casualness is gone forever. We can't unlearn what we've learned, can't stop wearing clothes, even when we try. The covering is in our minds now, permanent, invisible, inescapable. Let your thoughts scatter like fog, dissipating, disappearing. Nothing left to hold, nothing left to think. Just the soft darkness, the warm weight of blankets, the gentle pressure of mattress, supporting you, holding you. You're not here anymore. Not really. You're somewhere else, somewhere deeper, somewhere without words, without thoughts, without self, without the question of why we wear anything, why we stopped being anything. Clothing and morality became inseparable in most developed societies. The covered body was the moral body, the good body, the righteous body. Nakedness became associated with sin, with degradation, with moral failure. This was taught to children, reinforced through shame, encoded in law. The equation was simple, complete. Clothing equals virtue, nakedness equals vice. The complexity, the history, the millions of years of human nakedness, all erased, forgotten, replaced by a simple moral calculus that served social control. Why wear clothes? Because God demands it, because morality requires it, because being good means being covered. When nakedness became embarrassing, when the reflexive response to exposure became shame rather than neutrality, humanity crossed a threshold. Embarrassment is learned, cultural. Children must be taught to feel ashamed of their bodies. They don't arrive with this shame. They're taught it carefully, thoroughly, until it feels natural, until they can't imagine feeling any other way. The teaching is so effective we forget it happened. We think modesty is instinct. We think shame is natural. We're wrong, but we believe it completely. They stopped being naked innocently, learned to be naked shamefully. The modern fear of nudity approaches phobia in some individuals. The thought of being seen naked creates panic, terror, overwhelming anxiety. This is not natural. This is the end result of centuries of teaching shame, of associating nakedness with vulnerability and judgment and powerlessness. The fear is real. The suffering is real. But the cause is cultural, learned, reversible in theory, though rarely in practice. Why fear nakedness so much? Because we've been taught that naked is wrong, is dangerous, is the worst thing we can be. People who overcome this fear, who practice casual nudity in safe contexts, often report profound relief, liberation, the feeling of coming home to themselves. This suggests that the fear, while deeply felt, was never right, never true, never aligned with what the body actually needs or wants. But overcoming it requires unlearning years of conditioning, facing enormous social pressure, risking judgment and misunderstanding. Most people never try. The fear wins, the covering stays, the body remains hidden, shameful, wrong. They keep wearing clothes out of terror, keep stopping themselves from being naked out of learned fear. Naturalism versus civilization became a false binary. The idea emerged that naked peoples were primitive, uncivilized, backward, that clothing marked advancement, progress, sophistication. This justified colonialism, justified forcing indigenous peoples to dress, justified destroying cultures that had maintained comfortable relationships with nakedness for thousands of years. The covered peoples declared themselves superior, declared their way the only way, used violence to enforce covering on those who had no desire for it. Why force people to wear clothes? To civilize them, to save them, to make them human, even when they were already perfectly human while naked. This was cultural imperialism, erasure, destruction of diversity. The world's various relationships with clothing, from permanent covering to seasonal nudity to casual flexibility, all of this diversity was compressed, homogenized, forced into one model, the covered model, the civilized model, the variety of human experience, reduced, impoverished, made uniform according to the standards of the most thoroughly clothed societies. They made everyone start wearing clothes, made everyone stop being naked, claimed it was progress, called it civilization. It was violence. Nakedness in modern indigenous groups persists in some places, in remote areas, in protected communities, in groups that have resisted or avoided intense contact with covered cultures. Some people still live with casual nakedness, still raise naked children, still maintain ancient patterns. These groups are often studied, photographed, exoticized, their nakedness marked as unusual, primitive, worthy of documentation before it disappears. But for them, it's just normal. The way humans are, the way humans have always been. For most of history, they never needed reasons to wear clothes, never had reasons to stop being naked. They just continued being what humans are. You're breathing imperceptible now, so shallow, so soft. Maybe you're breathing, maybe you're not. The distinction unclear, unimportant. You're beyond breathing, beyond body, beyond the need for air or thought or awareness. Just the endless soft sinking, the dissolving into sleep, into dark, into nothing and everything at once. Beyond the history of covering, beyond the reasons for wearing anything, just being. What clothing changed in human behavior extends beyond the obvious. It changed how we move, how we gesture, how we stand and sit and walk. Clothing restricts movement, requires adjustment, demands attention. The naked body moves differently, more freely, more naturally, more like an animal, less like a constructed social being. Clothing makes us human in the cultural sense, by making us less human in the biological sense. Why wear restrictive clothes? To move differently, to signal culture over nature, to perform civilization through restricted bodies. Clothing changed how we relate to weather, to temperature, to the environment. The naked body is responsive, adaptive, constantly interacting with conditions. The clothed body is isolated, buffered, separated from direct experience of climate. We check weather apps instead of stepping outside and feeling. We rely on thermostats instead of our own sensors. We've delegated environmental awareness to technology because our covered bodies no longer need to track conditions directly. They started wearing clothes and stopped feeling the world directly, lost direct contact with reality. Clothing changed social dynamics, made class visible, made status readable, created uniforms and costumes and signals. The naked body is more egalitarian, more honest. Bodies vary, but they're all just bodies. Clothing creates hierarchy, separates, divides, marks. The covered society is the stratified society. The visible differences in clothing create and reinforce social boundaries that naked bodies wouldn't naturally have. Why wear class-marked clothes? To maintain hierarchy, to make inequality visible, to mark who's above and who's below. Did clothing slow evolution? Possibly. By allowing survival in any climate without biological adaptation, clothing reduced evolutionary pressure. Humans could live in the Arctic with tropical bodies, protected by sewn garments. There was no pressure to develop shorter limbs, thicker fat layers, metabolic changes that would aid cold tolerance. The clothing adapted, the biology stayed stable. This may have frozen certain aspects of human evolution, locked us into a tropical adapted form even as we spread globally. We started wearing clothes and stopped evolving physically. The clothes evolved instead, but clothing also created new selective pressures. Those who could make better clothing, plan better, manage resources better. These individuals had advantages. This may have selected for intelligence, for forward planning, for social cooperation. So clothing may have accelerated cognitive evolution even as it slowed physical evolution. The balance is unclear, complex, probably unmeasurable, but worth considering. Why did clothes matter for evolution? Because they changed which traits helped you survive, changed what it meant to be fit. The body as something to hide. This belief is among the most significant transformations in human consciousness. For most of existence, the body was simply self, obvious, unquestionable. No separation between the person and their physical form. No concept that the body should be concealed, managed, controlled. The body was just there, like the sky, like the ground, like reality itself. Why hide your body? The question wouldn't have made sense. It was like asking why hide your face, your hands, yourself. Incomprehensible. But now the body is problem, project, source of anxiety. We hide it, shape it, control it, photograph it from flattering angles, present edited versions to the world. The actual body, the one we inhabit, the one that sweats and sags and ages. This body is failure. This body must be hidden, improved, denied. The psychological violence of this transformation can't be overstated. We've been taught to hate what we are, to see our own physical form as wrong, inadequate, shameful. They started wearing clothes for practical reasons, but those reasons created psychological changes we never anticipated, never chose, never wanted. The first time nakedness felt wrong. This happened differently for every person, but it happened to almost everyone raised in clothing culture. There's a moment, often in early childhood, when the body shifts from neutral to problematic, when covering becomes necessary rather than optional, when exposure brings shame rather than just cold or vulnerability. This moment is a tragedy, a loss of innocence, the end of the easy relationship with physical self. After this moment, the person carries shame, carries awareness, carries the need to hide for the rest of their life. Why does nakedness start feeling wrong? Because we're taught. Because the moment comes when someone tells us to cover up, to be ashamed, to hide what we are. Let every part of you go soft now. dissolved, melted. There's no body anymore, no boundary, no separation between you and the darkness. You are the darkness. You are the quiet. You are the endless soft falling through space, through time, through nothing, forever, peaceful, complete, gone. Beyond reasons for wearing clothes, beyond the moment of stopping being naked, beyond history, beyond self. The universe keeps turning, slowly, endlessly, through darkness and light, through cold and heat, and somewhere in that turning, humans stopped being naked, slowly, over thousands of years, over millions of years. The fur thinned, then disappeared, then the covering returned, but external this time, made of other animals, other plants, constructed, chosen, worn. They started wearing clothes because the climate changed, because the cold came, because survival demanded it. The transformation happened so slowly no one noticed. Each generation slightly more clothed than the last. Each generation teaching its children different standards, different comfort levels, different relationships with the body, until finally, nakedness became strange, wrong, forbidden, until the covered body became the only body, the true body, the human body. They started wearing clothes for warmth, kept wearing them for habit, eventually couldn't stop for shame. But underneath, beneath the layers, beneath the centuries of conditioning, beneath the shame and the rules and the laws, the naked body remains, unchanged. The same body our ancestors had, the same skin that once felt African sun directly, that once knew itself completely, that once moved through the world without separation, without hiding, without shame. Why wear clothes at all, the naked body asks, silently, underneath. But no one listens, no one can hear. That body is still there, still yours, still capable of the ancient ease, the ancient comfort. If only we could remember. If only we could unlearn. If only we could find our way back to the simple truth that the body is not wrong, has never been wrong, was never meant to be hidden, judged, hated. But we can't go back. The way is closed. The knowledge is lost. We started wearing clothes and forgot why we started, forgot we ever lived another way. And so we drift, covered, hidden, carrying the weight of fabric and shame, moving through the world in layers, in armor, in the protection that became prison, unaware of what we lost, unable to imagine being any other way. The covered human is the modern human, the only human most of us will ever know. Why wear clothes? Because we must, because we've forgotten any alternative, because stopping being naked is complete. The slow invention of clothing, of modesty, of shame. This is the story of how humans became human, in the cultural sense, how we separated from animals, from nature, from direct physical existence, how we became something new, something clothed, something covered, something split between body and self, between hidden and shown, between what we are and what we present. Why did we start wearing clothes? To survive cold, to signal status, to hide shame, to become civilized. All of these, none of these. The reasons multiplied, transformed, became forgotten. This transformation created civilization, created cities, created everything we recognize as human culture. The covered body is the civilized body. And yet, something was lost. Something important. Something that connected us to ourselves, to each other, to the physical reality of being alive in a body. We started wearing clothes to survive. We kept wearing them to belong. We can't stop wearing them because we've become them. The clothes are us now. The naked body underneath, theoretical, forgotten, lost. We can't recover it, can't go back, can't unmake the change, but we can remember. We can recognize what happened. We can understand that the shame is learned, that the hiding is choice, that the body underneath remains innocent, original, unchanged by the thousands of years of covering. The body knows what it is, even if we've forgotten. Why did we start wearing clothes? When did we stop being naked? The questions loop endlessly, softly, through the night. Thump, thump, your heart barely there, a whisper, a memory of beating. You're so deep now, so far into sleep, so far into the dark. There's no coming back tonight, no waking until morning, just the endless rest, the soft suspension in the space between consciousness and void, the tale of clothing and nakedness dissolving, becoming background, becoming dream. The mysteries keep looping, softly, endlessly. When did we stop being naked? Why did we start wearing clothes? The answer is, we never completely stopped, never completely started. Underneath, we're still naked, still bare, still the unclothed animal we've always been. The clothing is costume, performance, temporary. The body underneath persists, unchanged, waiting, remembering in its cells the long history of being uncovered, unashamed, uncomplicated. We wear clothes on the surface, remain naked underneath, forever split, forever divided. 100 mysteries of nakedness and covering, of skin and fabric, of shame and innocence, of the long, slow transformation from bare to clothed, all of them drifting past you now, through you, becoming part of your sleep, part of your dreams, part of the soft, dark space where you rest, where you recover, where you simply are, without judgment, without shame, without the need to present or perform or hide, without reasons to wear anything, without memory of when you stopped being anything, just being, just breath, just the quiet darkness holding you, supporting you, letting you rest, completely, deeply, safely. The mysteries don't need solving. The questions don't need answering. Everything can wait. Everything can drift away. There's only now, only this, only the soft, endless falling into sleep, into peace, into the dark where clothing and nakedness cease to mean anything, cease to matter, cease to exist. The universe keeps turning. When did we stop being naked? Why did we start wearing clothes? And the slow invention of clothing, modesty, and the idea of being human, and we'll keep drifting, floating together through the mysteries. 100. When did we stop being naked? Mysteries, looping softly, endlessly through the night, and we'll keep drifting, floating together through the mysteries. 100. When did we stop being naked? Mysteries, looping softly, endlessly through the night. Tonight we'll drift through the first cold night that forced humans to cover their skin, the moment clothing rewired shame and self-awareness in the human brain, and the forgotten age when children stayed naked long after adults dressed. There's nothing you need to do now. Just let your body sink. Heavier, heavier. Feel the mattress holding you, every muscle softening, your heartbeat slowing, thump, thump, matching the rhythm of space itself, shoulders melting down, jaw releasing, each breath pulling you deeper, deeper into the calm, the quiet, the dark. And we'll keep drifting, floating together endlessly through the soft, dark mysteries, through the questions that have no answers, through the history of covering and revealing, of stopping and starting, of being naked and becoming clothed, forever looping softly, peacefully